ever feel like we're all expected to know how W to learn, but like nobody actually ever sat us down and explained it?
Hmm.
It's like having this incredible supercomputer in our heads,
Yeah.
but somebody forgot to give us the user manual.
Right.
So today we are diving into Power Up Your Mind
Okay.
by Bill Lucas, which is all about kind of unlocking that user manual and becoming, as he puts it, a learning machine.
Yeah, it's so true. We spend all these years, learning math and history and languages and all this stuff,
Right.
but we so rarely actually step back and think about the learning process itself.
It's like we know more about how to use our phones than we do about our own brains.
Right, exactly.
And Lucas, he kicks off with this idea that we don't even just have one brain. We've got three: the
Hmm.
reptilian, the mammalian, and the learning brain. And I'll be honest, when I first read that, I was like, okay, is this like some kind of weird science fiction?
It sounds a little out there,
Yeah.
but it's actually rooted in some pretty solid neuroscience.
Mm.
Think of it like layers of evolution, right? All
Mhm.
within our own skulls.
Okay.
So that reptilian brain, that's the oldest part. That's all about survival instincts, like fight or flight.
Oh, okay.
That's all happening down there.
So that's my inner caveman freaking out whenever there's a deadline.
Exactly. And it's trying to protect you in a way,
Right.
even if it's not always the most helpful response.
Right.
Now, the mammalian brain, that adds in things like emotions and memory habits. That feeling of comfort when you smell like a familiar scent.
Mm.
You can thank your mammalian brain for making that connection.
Okay. So we've got the survivalist and we've got the sentimentalist. Where does the learning brain fit into all of this?
Right. Well, that's the one we want to be best friends with.
Right.
The learning brain, or the neocortex, this is what makes us uniquely human.
Okay.
This is where we handle language, complex thought, problem solving. It's the newest addition in terms of our evolution, and it's really the key to our adaptability as a species.
So how does knowing all of this, how does knowing about these three brains actually help us learn better? Is this just like a fun fact? Or is there something we can actually do with this information?
It's way more than a fun fact.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to, say, learn a new software program.
Yeah.
But you keep getting all these error messages.
Right.
What happens?
You get frustrated.
You start feeling that frustration.
Right.
That's your reptilian brain kicking in.
Oh, it's like danger, danger.
Exactly. It's perceiving those errors as a threat.
Right.
And so this is where understanding the interplay between these different brains becomes really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
If you can recognize, okay, that's just my reptilian brain kind of overreacting to this situation,
Mm-hmm.
you can then consciously choose to engage your learning brain. You can take a deep breath, break down the problem step by step. Essentially, you're learning to manage your brain's own responses.
So instead of being controlled by the lizard brain,
Right.
we can actually harness the learning brain. That's kind of cool.
Exactly.
And speaking of cool things that we can harness, Lucas lays out these 5, what he calls brain-friendly principles for learning
Right.
that take this to a whole other level.
Yeah. These principles are all about leveraging the way our brains are naturally wired, right?
Okay.
And one of the ones he dives into is the power of novelty.
Hmm.
Our brains crave novelty.
Okay.
New experiences, new information, new challenges. These all trigger dopamine, right?
Right.
Which is that feel-good chemical. And it actually aids in the learning process.
So it's like our brains are these little kids going, entertain me, entertain me.
Instead of just like doing the same old routine, we need to shake things up a little bit.
Exactly. Lucas actually talks about how even small changes can make a difference, like taking a different route to work or trying a new recipe.
Mhm.
Just little things to kind of keep your brain engaged and primed for learning.
So novelty is key. What are some of the other principles that he talks about? So alongside novelty, our brains thrive on making connections, finding patterns. We're wired for imitation.
Okay.
But he also talks about how detrimental stress can be to the learning process.
And I would imagine that's separate from just the lizard brain hijacking us, right?
Right. This is more about chronic stress
Okay.
that actually hinders your brain's ability to form new neural pathways,
Oh, wow.
which is essential for learning.
Right.
But don't worry, he offers solutions for that too.
So stress is like, I don't know, kryptonite for our learning superpowers.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, he doesn't just leave us hanging, right? There's got to be things we can do.
Oh yeah, there's definitely stuff you can do. And it's not just your, meditate and drink chamomile tea kind of solutions.
Yeah, right.
Although, I mean, those work too. But he talks a lot about the importance of what he calls active recovery.
Okay.
Instead of just like pushing ourselves to the
Yeah,
brink,
right.
it's about actually building in regular breaks
Yeah.
and engaging in activities that help us to actually unwind and de-stress.
So give our brains a chance to actually chill out and recharge a little bit.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I mean, if we're just constantly running on fumes,
Mm.
no wonder nothing's really sinking in.
Yeah, you got to think of it like a muscle, right? After you've
Mm.
given it a workout,
Mm,
it needs time to recover and rebuild before you can really push it again.
that's a good point. And speaking of things that our brains are kind of like naturally wired for, one of the principles that really stood out to me was this idea of imitation. And he's not talking about just like, copying somebody's every move.
Right.
It's more about consciously choosing people to learn from and kind of modeling ourselves
Yeah.
after their expertise.
Right. And Lucas makes this really interesting point that imitation, it's actually like deeply ingrained in our neural circuitry, right?
Okay.
I mean, think about it from the time we're little kids, right?
Yeah.
We learn by watching and mimicking the people around us. It's how we pick up language, social cues. Shoot, it's how we learn to ride a bike.
Yeah.
And this principle, it doesn't just disappear when we become adults.
Right.
We're constantly being influenced, whether we realize it or not, by the people that we choose to surround ourselves with.
So if we're serious about like leveling up our skills in a certain area, surrounding ourselves with people who are already killing it in that area, that can actually make a difference.
It's huge.
Mm.
It's almost like, we're choosing our mentors in a way, even if we don't realize that's what we're doing.
Right.
It's like surrounding yourself with excellence, basically.
Yeah, it's like immersing yourself in that world. Now, beyond those kind of like those brain-friendly principles,
Mhm.
Power Up Your Mind introduces this whole concept of learnacy, which I thought was really interesting.
Particularly where, right?
It's like we've graduated from just learning like stuff
Right.
to actually cultivating the skill of learning itself. So tell me more about this whole learnacy thing.
So learnacy, it's about moving beyond just memorizing facts and figures and actually developing those essential skills of being a competent learner, which, as Lucas argues, I mean, they're becoming even more crucial in this rapidly changing world that we're living in.
So it's like having this mental toolkit
Yes.
that allows you to adapt and learn anything, no matter what the subject matter is.
Exactly. Exactly. And to illustrate this, he actually goes beyond your traditional 3 R's.
Oh, okay.
Your reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
And he introduces what he calls the 5 R's of learnacy.
Okay, I like it. Hit me with those 5 R's.
All right. So we've got resilience, resourcefulness, reflectiveness, responsiveness, and remembering.
5 R's. I can get behind that curriculum.
Right.
All right, so let's break those down a little bit. Like, what does it actually mean to be a resilient learner?
Okay, so resilience, in the context of learning, it's all about bouncing back from setbacks.
Okay.
It's that grit, that determination to keep going, even when things get tough, when you encounter obstacles, when you make mistakes.
Which, let's be real, happens to all of us, especially when we're trying to learn something new. Right?
All the time.
Yeah.
And that's where Lucas provides some really insightful strategies, I think.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of reframing failure, not as like a reflection of our worth.
Right.
There's a learning opportunity.
Okay.
It's about cultivating what we call a growth mindset,
Right.
where we start to see challenges as chances to learn and improve, not as threats to our ego.
So instead of getting discouraged when we hit a roadblock, it's more about, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my approach and try again?
Exactly. And another really critical R, he talks about resourcefulness.
Okay.
And you can think of this as almost becoming like an information detective.
Ooh, okay. I like it. I am intrigued. Tell me more.
So it's about knowing where to look for information,
Okay.
how to evaluate whether that information is credible,
Right.
and then ultimately how to use that information effectively. So it's not just about Googling something.
Right.
It's about asking the right questions,
Mm-hmm.
connecting the dots,
Okay.
knowing when to actually reach out for help from an expert.
So it's like having this internal compass
Yes,
that helps you navigate this sea of information that's constantly coming at us.
absolutely.
Now, something tells me this ties into motivation. Because even if you have all the resources in the world, you still got to actually want to learn the thing, right?
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. Motivation. I mean, that's the fuel. That's what keeps us going.
It is.
And just like a car can't run on an empty tank, our brains need that little something extra.
Absolutely. And I think so often we think about motivation as something we either have or we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just, oh, I'm just not a motivated
Oh,
person.
not a math person.
Exactly. But Lucas challenges that. He argues that motivation is something we can actually cultivate.
Okay.
And he even offers this formula for understanding it.
A formula for motivation. Now, you're speaking my language.
Right. So he calls it the motivation equation.
Okay.
And it breaks down motivation into 4 key factors:
Okay.
readiness, value, probability, and impact. Okay, let's break that down. What do you mean by what was the first one? Readiness.
Readiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So readiness is all about being in the right headspace to actually learn.
Okay.
Are you feeling curious and engaged, or are you feeling burnt out and resistant?
Right.
It's about kind of recognizing, okay, what's my internal state right now, and creating the optimal conditions for learning to take root.
So if you're trying to learn something new after like a really crazy day at work, and all you want to do is just like turn off your brain,
Exactly.
your readiness factor is like at an all-time low.
Exactly. And that's where self-awareness comes in. Recognizing, okay, my readiness is low right now. Instead of trying to force it,
Right.
maybe I need to do something to unwind so I can come back to this later.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about, was it value? That was another one. So that's got to be about seeing like why this matters.
Exactly. Value is all about connecting with the why behind the what.
Okay.
Like, why does this matter to me?
Right.
How is this information actually going to enhance my life, my work, my understanding of the world?
Right.
Because if you can't answer that question, I mean, your motivation is probably going to fizzle out pretty quickly.
It's like, who cares about memorizing a bunch of random facts and figures?
Right.
But if you can see how it connects to something you're actually passionate about,
Exactly.
that's a game changer.
Okay, so we've got readiness, value. What was the next one?
Probability. So this is, do you actually believe that you can learn this?
Oh, that is self-doubt. That's the killer. Right. If you're going into it like, this is too hard, or I'm just not cut out for this,
Right.
you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Meh.
So much of this is about mindset. It's about believing in your own ability to grow.
Okay, so readiness, value, probability. What's that last piece of the puzzle?
The last piece is impact.
Okay.
So how is this knowledge actually going to change your life? Will it help you achieve your goals, solve a problem, make you more effective at something? The more we can connect with the potential impact,
Right.
the more motivated we're going to be.
It's about having that vision, like this is where I want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by understanding these 4 factors,
Okay.
we can actually kind of start to diagnose like, okay, where am I getting stuck?
You're right.
Is my readiness low? Do I need to connect more with the value? Do I have some limiting beliefs I need to challenge?
It's like a diagnostic tool for our minds.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. Now, even if we've got like all cylinders firing on the motivation front, there's still this other challenge of just like remembering what we learn.
Right.
It's like it goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, we've all been there. So one technique he talks about is the power of place as a memory peg.
Okay.
Our brains are actually incredible at associating information with location.
Oh, yeah.
Think about a time you walked into a room
Hmm.
and you instantly remembered something that happened there.
Oh, all the time. It's like certain places have memories like embedded in them.
Exactly. And we can actually
the-
leverage that. Let's say you're trying to like memorize a presentation or something.
Okay.
Instead of just practicing it anywhere, practice it in the room
Oh, wow.
where you're actually going to give the presentation.
So you're connecting the information to that location.
Exactly. Because you're creating a stronger neural link.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. What else?
He also emphasizes like why cramming for a test,
Right.
while it might work in the short term, ultimately it doesn't stick.
It's like building a house on a foundation of sand.
Exactly. He talks about how actually spacing out your learning over time and engaging in regular review actually strengthens those neural pathways.
So it's quality over quantity when it comes to study time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're giving your brain that time and space to make those connections.
And speaking of giving our brains what they need, we got to talk about sleep.
Yes. Sleep.
The ultimate brain booster.
It is.
We tend to think about sleep as like downtime,
Right.
but it's so much more active than we realize.
Our brains are busy.
So even though we're catching those Z's, our brain is hard at work.
Consolidating all that information.
It's like our brains are pulling an all-nighter even though we're sound asleep.
Exactly.
And this is actually super important for our learning.
It's crucial. Think of it this way. Learning something new is kind of like creating a path through a forest.
Okay.
Initially, it's just a faint trail.
Mm.
But with repeated use and reinforcement, and that includes sleep,
Okay.
that trail becomes a well-worn path.
So when we wake up and we're like, oh, I know the answer to that problem I was struggling with, that was our brain working overnight, like making those connections while we were sleeping.
Exactly. That's your brain's night shift at work.
We seriously underestimate the power of sleep.
Big time.
Mm.
And that's one of the most, I think, valuable takeaways from this book. Learning isn't just about what you do when you're sitting down at your desk.
Mm.
It's about creating the optimal conditions for your brain to thrive.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to power down for the day.
Sounds good to me.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Power Up Your Mind by Bill Lucas. And seriously, this book is full of amazing insights if you want to, level up your learning game.
It's a great reminder that learning is a lifelong journey,
It is.
and it can be an incredibly fulfilling and impactful one
Yeah.
if we just take the time to understand how our amazing brains work.
So if you're ready to ditch the flashcards and, actually unlock your learning potential, go check out Power Up Your Mind.
It's got something for everyone.
It really does. And with that, we'll let you get back to your own learning adventures.
Learning.
Until next time.